Hello, dear dreamer. Before we begin, I want you to take a slow breath in through your nose and gently let it out like a whisper, leaving the edge of a soft blanket. Again, a slow breath in and out. Let the stillness settle into your chest. And as your eyelids grow heavy, imagine the weight of the day slowly lifting, like a soft mist rising over a sleeping meadow. Let yourself feel held, safe, and warm. Feel the weight of your blanket, the hush of the room, the comfort of knowing there is nowhere else to be but here. You might begin to notice little things now. The sound of your breath, the space between your thoughts, the warm quiet inside your chest, and maybe even a flickering fireplace crackling gently in your mind. Yes, that's where we'll go tonight. To a burrow, tucked away beneath the hill, in a land where stories live. Our story tonight sets sail at the edge of the Shire with the most curious little hobbit who did something no one else in the Four Farthings had ever quite tried before. He collected shadows. Yes, soft, gentle, whispering shadows. And tonight, we'll walk with him. Our story begins on a velvet evening in late autumn, when the breeze had just begun to taste like cider apples and chimney smoke. The hills were golden with sleeping grass, and the sky, oh, the sky was that soft, pale indigo, the kind that makes you feel like you're dreaming before you've even gone to bed. In a burrow beneath a hill, not far from Hobbiton but hidden enough to be secret, lived a little hobbit named Pellinor Thistlefoot. Now Pellinor was not your usual hobbit. He liked second breakfasts, of course, and pipeweed on cool evenings, and apple tarts with honey glaze. But more than all that, he loved shadows. Not the kind that frighten little ones in the dark, no. Not the creeping, pointy sort that cling to corners, but the quiet ones, the gentle ones, the ones that drift across mossy stone or curl beneath a rocking chair at twilight, or wrap themselves around your toes just as you're about to nod off in front of the fire. Pellinor said those shadows were soft as wool and warm as stories, and that if you were careful enough and kind enough, you could catch them and keep them. And he did. Into the burrow, sounds and atmosphere. Pellinor's burrow was small but cozy, carved neatly into a hillside called Fernroot Knob. The door was round and painted the color of plums. It squeaked slightly when it opened, like it was trying to say hello. Inside, oh, inside, it smelled of lavender oil and cinnamon wood and the faintest trace of toasted walnuts. The fireplace was always glowing, even when the embers died down. The hearth sighed a little, like it was dreaming of logs long gone, and lining every nook and shelf, nestled between old books and polished stones, were little glass jars, hundreds of them, each sealed tight with wax or cork, and inside each one, a little shadow, software curled, asleep. They shimmered ever so slightly, not quite visible, but not quite invisible either, like the memory of a song you almost remember. Some were violet, some gray-blue, some the color of dusky leaves just after rain, and each one, Pellinor said, was a place he had been. Because you see, in the old folktales of the Shire, the ones told only near solstices, with cider mugs in hand, They say shadows remember where your feet have wandered, where your heart has lingered. A shadow knows. And if you keep the shadows close, your dreams will always know the way home. Whimsy and ritual, how he collected them. Now collecting shadows wasn't as easy as plucking apples from a tree. Oh no. Pellinor had a method, a rhythm, almost a ritual. Each evening, as the sun began to sigh into the west, he would step outside, barefoot, so he could feel the hush of the grass beneath his feet. He carried with him a satchel of tiny jars, lined with silk, so the shadows wouldn't feel cold, and a small silver spoon, which had once belonged, he claimed, to an elf maiden who caught moonlight in her tea. He'd wait, by trees, under archways, beside fences, anywhere shadows gathered to whisper about the day. And when one felt just right, soft, sleepy, and ready, he'd gently scoop it up, spoon cradling the curve of it, and slide it into a jar. Then he'd seal it with a whisper, a real whisper, a breath that said, "Thank you, little one. Rest well." Sometimes the jar would sigh, ever so faintly, as the shadow settled inside. Clink, software gentle, and then he'd tuck it away. Now, you might ask, how did he tell one shadow from another? Ah, that was Pellinor's special gift. Each jar had a little tag, tied with twine. Some read, "The bend in the riverbank, where dragonflies hum. Under the willow that knows my name. The third step on Old Bramble Lane, where I tripped as a boy." Each shadow, a place, a feeling, a memory. And on quiet nights, like the one we're imagining now, Pellinor would sit cross-legged by the fire, choose a jar at random, and open it, just a crack. And oh, the shadows would stretch, like cats waking from nap time, and the room would change. Suddenly the walls would shimmer like moonlit grass, or smell faintly of river water, or echo with laughter from a childhood moment. The jars were dreams, and Pellinor, he was their keeper. The visitors, curious hobbits, and a warning. Now, word of Pellinor's jars did not stay secret forever. As you know, in the Shire, even secrets travel faster than rabbits in spring. From Overhill to Tookbank, whispers fluttered. There's a hobbit who catches the dark. He stores night in little jars. He keeps dreams on shelves. And some thought it nonsense, but others grew curious. Once, a Took cousin visited, big-footed and big-voiced, and tried to open several jars all at once. Pellinor stopped him with a firm shake of the head. No, no, one at a time. Too many shadows, and you'll forget where your feet are. The cousin laughed, until he opened 3 at once. The room spun. The fireplace flickered sideways, and for a brief, dizzy moment, he forgot his own name. Pellinor quietly recorked the jars and whispered the names back inside them. And just like that, everything settled again. From that day on, the Tooks kept to their side of the hill. One shadow left, a dream beckons. But of all the shadows Pellinor kept, there was one jar he never opened. It sat on the highest shelf, wrapped in black ribbon, untagged. He'd stare at it sometimes, gaze soft, breath held. And once, on a particularly wistful night, he told his fireplace the story. "It's the first one I ever caught," he said. "The shadow of my mother's lap, where I fell asleep by the fire, the night she told me dreams had wings. He had saved it, because he knew someday he would need to find that warmth again. And that night, he almost opened it His fingers hovered near the ribbon. His heart thudded gently in his chest. But instead, he lit another candle and whispered, "Not yet. The wind comes calling. A strange night begins." Now one evening, just as the moon was rising, and the wind had a strange scent to it, lavender and silver somehow, Pellinor heard a knock. Not a hobbit knock, too soft for that. Number this was the knock of something old and far and made of memory. He opened his door and found no one, but on his doorstep was a feather, not from any bird he knew. It shimmered like shadow glass, light and dark at once, and beneath it, a note. In curling silver ink, it read, "The dreaming path is opening. Bring your shadows. Your heart knows the way." Pellinor's hands trembled. He read it again. He felt the hush of the night settle around him like a cloak, and the softest tug, like a dream calling his name, to be continued. This, dear dreamer, is where we leave Pellinor, for now. The wind is rising. The jars are humming ever so softly, and the path ahead twinkles in shadow light. But for now, let your breath slow. Let your thoughts drift. Let the hush of the Shire carry you. You are safe. The shadows you've walked with, they remember. And your dreams, they will know the way home. Good night. Good night. Good night. Close your eyes again, dear listener. Let the weight of your day melt into the pillow. Let your thoughts drift like leaves on a quiet stream. You are warm, you are safe, and you are so very welcome here. Our story continues now, just past midnight in the Shire, when dreams walk softly and shadows begin to stir Pellinor. Thistlefoot stood barefoot in the dewy grass, the silver feather and the strange note still in his hand. The wind, soft and strange, curled around his ankles as if guiding him forward, beckoning him down the hill. He turned to glance at his little burrow. The plum-colored door closed gently behind him, the fireplace inside glowing warm, as if saying, "Be careful, but go." He nodded to no one in particular, then stepped out into the night, his satchel slung across his shoulder, its tiny glass jars clinking faintly with every step. The sound was like lullabies wrapped in fog. Tink, tink, tink. He walked where the wind whispered, past thistlebrush and sleepy mushrooms, through the hedgerow gate and onto the old moss path, the one no one used anymore, because it didn't seem to lead anywhere. But Pellinor knew better. Paths didn't need destinations, only intention. With every step, the stars above him brightened, as if approving his journey. The air grew sweeter, softer, and the silence became alive. It wasn't an empty silence, but a full one, like when someone you love is sitting next to you, saying nothing, but you know they are there. After a time, Pellinor reached the place where the trees grew taller, their trunks pale and silver, their leaves like whispers caught in wind. He paused here, heart steady, for this was the edge of the dreaming path. He had heard of it only in lullabies and old fire circle stories. It was said that those who walk the dreaming path walk into the realm of their own heart, and if they are brave enough and quiet enough and true enough, they might meet the keeper of their dreams. He took out one of his shadow jars, held it up to the moonlight. The soft swirl inside stretched, slow and sleepy, like a cat rising from slumber. "This one," he whispered, "was from the bench beneath the oak, where I first felt the world was wide and beautiful. He uncorked it gently, and as the shadow slipped free, the air around him shimmered. The ground beneath his feet glowed faintly, and a path formed, not a road made of stone, but one made of memory. It glimmered with warm moss, woven light, and something else. The quiet knowing that lives deep inside you, the part that remembers everything you thought you forgot. Pellinor stepped forward, and the path welcomed him. Each footfall was light, and each shadow, Jare on his belt began to hum. He passed through groves of trees that smelled like lullabies, past stones that whispered old Hobbit songs, past puddles that shimmered with scenes from his childhood. There was the old kettle his grandmother used, the soft curl of steam that meant comfort, the patch of grass where he'd first seen a dragonfly, wings glinting like tiny windows, and he realized these were not just places he had walked. They were parts of him, woven into his bones, held in the shadows he had gathered all these years. One shadow jar began to tremble, the smallest one, tied with a green ribbon. He opened it slowly, and from it rose the soft smell of rain on dirt, and a faint sound, laughter, the high, clear kind of a friend long gone. The path shifted again, leading him now through a field of stars. They bloomed like flowers, tiny, pulsing lights opening with each step. He felt their warmth brush his cheeks, like the hands of someone who loved him once. Pellinor whispered, "Thank you. Thank you for staying with me all these years." He walked further through time, through memory, through the hush of night, made sacred by dreams. And then he saw it, a gate, not made of wood, but of braided moonlight and shadow, twisting together in gentle spirals, like wind and breath, like goodbye and homecoming. It opened without sound. On the other side was a glade, circular and perfect. In its center a figure waited, not tall, not short, not old, not young, cloaked in velvet twilight, with hair like flowing ink, and eyes that sparkled like reflections in a well. The figure smiled, not with lips, but with presence. "Welcome, Pellinor, Thistlefoot, keeper of shadows, child of stories, seeker of what sleeps within." Pellinor stepped forward, heart beating slow. He held up his satchel, filled with jars, still glowing faintly. "I have brought them," he said. "The places I've walked, the moments I've kept, the dreams I've protected." The figure nodded gently, and with a wave of the hand, the jars floated from the satchel, hovering in the still air. Spinning slowly, each one began to open, one by one, their shadows rising like curling ink in water. They did not scatter, they danced. They danced around Pellinor, winding softly around his arms, touching his hair, whispering back to him his own memories. The scent of his mother's bread, the sound of early morning birds, the softness of moss between toes. And then one last jar floated upward, the one with no label, wrapped in black ribbon. The first one, the one he'd never dared to open. Pellinor reached up, his fingers trembling, his breath slow. He pulled the ribbon free, and the moment the cork lifted, a warmth spread through the glade. Not heat, but home. The shadow rose, and it was not dark. It was golden, like firelight on sleepy eyes, like the arms of someone who waits for you with cocoa and patience. Pellinor exhaled, a sound like a child sighing into a blanket. The figure in the center of the glade spoke again. "You have done what few can. You have remembered. You have carried them now. You may rest." Pellinor's eyes grew heavy, his limbs light. The shadow surrounded him, not to hide him, but to hold him. He sank slowly onto the soft earth, head resting against dream-soaked moss. And as the glade dimmed into silence, and the stars above turned slower, he let himself drift, carried gently by all the places he had loved, and all the moments that had loved him back. His final whisper before sleep was this: "Thank you, little shadows. You've always known the way home." And then he slept, deep, peaceful, wrapped in memory and light, safe in the hush between stories. Good night, Pellinor. Good night, sweet collector of dreams. Good night. Breathe in gently now, and let it out slowly. Let your shoulders relax again, your jaw soften, your eyes rest a little heavier. The night still wraps around you, and our story drifts on, like a paper lantern on a still lake. Pellinor Thistlefoot. He slept long in that dreaming glade, longer than a blink, shorter than a season. Time did not pass in the ordinary way there, because in the realm of dreams, the heart keeps its own hours. When at last he stirred, the sun had not risen, but the sky had lightened, just enough to whisper, "Soon." He blinked, and the memory of warmth still clung to his skin, like the last soft embers of a hearth fire. He sat up slowly and found, to his quiet surprise, that the glade was empty. No jars, no shadows, no cloaked figure in the center, only him, and the steady hum of something newly whole within his satchel, though lighter, still hung at his side and nestled inside. A single jar, larger than any he had ever carried, tied not with ribbon, but with thread spun from silver mist inside it. A glow, not shadow, but something more, memory maybe, or perhaps a piece of himself. He stood, and the ground beneath him was soft as promise. The trees bowed, gently, their leaves sighing in the wind as if to say, "Well done." He turned, and the gate of moonlight and shadow had become a simple arch of vines and moss inviting him home. He stepped through it, and the path behind him folded away, not erased, but tucked, like a letter sealed with wax, waiting to be opened again someday. He walked back through the dreaming woods, the stars above still lazily blinking, the hush of the night never quite leaving him. As he walked, he passed again the puddles, the ones that shimmered with memory, but now they reflected more than scenes. They reflected him as he truly was, a hobbit who remembered, who wondered, who listened to the quiet corners of the world. And now, who understood, by the time he reached the hedge gate, the first light of morning began to stretch over the Shire, long golden fingers brushing rooftops, awakening birds, warming sleepy windows. He opened his little plum-colored door and stepped into the familiar warmth of home. The fire had gone to embers, but the room still held its hush, as if it had been waiting for him. Exactly as he left it, he set the glowing chair upon the mantel, right above the fireplace, and it pulsed gently like a heartbeat, like a lullaby in glass. Pellinor sat down in his favorite chair, pulled the knitted blanket over his lap, and let out a long, long sigh. He didn't need to collect shadows anymore, not because he had stopped believing in them, but because now he knew they had been collecting him all along, following him through every step, remembering for him every small moment he thought had slipped away, holding the pieces of his journey until he was ready to see them whole. He leaned back, the fire cracked softly, and the room filled with peace. Outside, the breeze danced through ivy and eaves, rustled the herbs by the window, carried the scent of rosemary and dreaming, and far off, maybe only in his memory, the tiniest clink of glass. Tink, tink, tink. He closed his eyes, and the day melted into velvet, somewhere beyond time. The glade of shadows waited, as it always would, for dreamers, for wanderers, for those who remembered the feel of moonlight on moss, and for those who believed that shadows are never just the absence of light, but the places where our truest memories go to rest. So sleep now, sleep as gently as falling petals, as slowly as tide returning to shore, wrapped in every step you've taken, every quiet joy that followed behind, and every shadow that still knows the way home. Good night. Dream deep, and may the softest dusk guide you home again. Shh. You're still with us, still drifting, still wrapped in the quiet folds of the Shire. There is no need to move, no need to think, only to listen and let your breath move like soft wind through barley fields. The hearth inside Pellinor's burrow had gone cold again, but it didn't matter, because something inside him stayed warm now, a kind of warmth that fire couldn't make, and winter couldn't take in the days that followed. He lived much as he always had, tending to his garden, watching the clouds, reading the old journals he had bound himself with twine and care. But there was a difference now, a stillness in him, a kind of hush that made birds feel safe enough to perch near, even when he hummed quietly. While watering the herbs, he still carried his satchel, though the jars inside it were fewer, and one, just one, always glowed softly through the linen, that single jar from the dreaming glade, the one tied with silver mist. Sometimes he would hold it close to his chest and simply breathe. Other times, on misty evenings, when the world felt folded in, he would sit at the edge of the Bramblebank Creek and listen to the jar, for inside it a song would sometimes play, not with music, but with memory, the kind of song you only hear with your heart, the kind of song that makes you remember the way the wind smelled, the day you realized you were enough, exactly as you were. News of his shadow spread, as stories do in the Shire passed between neighbors over fences, tucked between slices of seed cake, whispered among children with lamplit eyes. Some laughed, others wondered, and a precious few, understood. On one moonless night, a knock came to Pellinor's door, a gentle knock, like knuckles wrapped in wonder. He opened it slowly, and there stood a young hobbit, barely come of age, holding a tiny jar, empty and hopeful. She looked up with eyes full of twilight. "I've seen shadows that feel like memories," she said. "On the lake when I sit alone. They swirl and wait. I don't know what to do with them." Pellinor smiled, the kind of smile that only comes from having once asked the same question. He stepped aside, wordless, led her in, lit the fire with 3 practiced breaths, and poured warm honey tea into 2 earthen mugs. They sat in silence, her fingers tracing the rim of the empty jar, until she asked, "What if they're not good shadows? What if they're heavy?" Pellinor looked into the fire, watched the flames curl and fall. "Even the heaviest shadows," he said softly, "are only heavy because they stayed close to keep you company." She nodded slowly, and together they watched the jar fill, not all at once, not visibly, but in the way the air changed, the way the room seemed to hold its breath in kindness. From then on, every few weeks, someone would knock with a question, a jar, a dream they couldn't quite hold alone. Pellinor never gave them answers, only tea and stories, and and the space where they could see their shadows were not something to fear. In time, a little wooden box appeared outside his door, unmarked. Except for a small carving of a feather in a jar, people began leaving things in it. A folded poem, a pine cone, a small rock with a face drawn on it, and jars, always jars, some full, some empty. We kept them, tended them like a gardener tends seeds, and some nights when the wind was slow and the moon wore her gentlest face, he would walk back to the glade, the dreaming path still opening, when called gently enough. There, he would release the shadows, let them curl and stretch, and find their way into the sky, into the dreaming of the world, because dreams, after all, need places to come from, and Pellinor had become a quiet keeper of those beginnings. He never called himself a wise hobbit, but the shadows did, and the glade did, and in time, so did his dreams. Now, as you lie there, wrapped in blankets and breath, maybe you feel one of your own shadows nearby. It might be quiet, might be soft, might be the shape of an old melody, or the scent of a friend you miss. Whatever it isn't here to scare you. It's here to remember with you. You don't need to understand it all at once. You only need to breathe, because your dreams, like Pellinor's, know the way home. So rest, dear listener. Let your thoughts drift like a dandelion fluff. Let the night wrap around you like story thread. Let the hush become your pillow. And remember, shadows are not just what light leaves behind. They are proof that something stood there once. Something real. Something worth remembering. Sleep now, wrapped in memory and moonlight, safe in the spaces between your footsteps and all the paths still waiting to unfold. Good night. Good night, you lovely keeper of soft things and gentle dreams. The story waits for you again, whenever your heart needs it. Sleep deeply and dream homeward.